Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our work session. It's Monday, October 23rd. It's 10 in the morning. We have a special work session today. If you would please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance before we get going. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, our one and only item is discussion of a non-binding tax increment development district, TID, memorandum of understanding between the City of Las Cruces and New Mexico State University. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem. Chris Favor, Economic Development for the record. I'm going to turn this over to NMSU here in a minute, but I just wanted to introduce Scott Eschenbrenner and Wayne Savage with NMSU. They will introduce their consultants. NMSU wanted an opportunity to discuss with the council a collaboration of a potential tax increment district along NMSU and portions of campus. They have a presentation that they will be making for you here. And I've also asked staff from key departments who would be involved in a project like this to be in attendance. So we have Public Works, Community Development, utilities, finance, and of course police and fire are here as well to answer any questions you may have. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Eschenbrenner with Mexico State University and stand by for questions after. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, Scott. Please come to the podium, state your name for the record.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Scott Eschenbrenner, and I'm a special assistant to the president. So good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, city councilors, and City Manager Peely. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to come before y'all today in this work session. We're here very excited about the opportunities. I think could be a phenomenal opportunity, as you'll hear throughout this presentation. A collaboration between the City of Las Cruces and New Mexico State University for some significant potential for economic development for this community and for the region as well. So one thing I want to point out that since we first came in August, obviously there's been some questions, which is natural, and we really appreciate the opportunity to come for you all in this work session. I hope that we'll have answers to a lot of those questions, but really this is just the beginning of a pretty long process, and a lot of these questions will probably be developed out through several sessions with the core team for the City of Las Cruces as well as our core team at New Mexico State University. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our core team. Again, I'm Scott Eschenbrenner. We've got Wayne Savage. Wayne's sitting back here. He's the executive director for Arrowhead Park. And then if I could, I'd like to have Harry Relkin come up and introduce and just give a short introduction of his background and why he's part of our special team that New Mexico State University has hired to help us move forward with this TID collaboration with the city. I think you'll find that they're uniquely qualified to help represent NMSU and help us move forward. And then I'll introduce Kim after that. So Harry, if you don't mind, please.
Thank you, Scott. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council and staff. My name is Harry Relkin. I am a native New Mexican, educated in New Mexico, and an attorney by trade. Why I am part of this, I'm principal of Sage Land Solutions, a land consulting group, and my background that I think may be helpful in this effort is that I was the senior vice president at the Mesa del Sol development when TID was created. We were one of the two main entities that created TID, and I was part of a team of 4 that drafted the original TID legislation for the state legislature to consider, and then led the lobbying effort to get it passed for the state of New Mexico. Subsequent to that TID being in place, and you may be familiar with Mesa del Sol, and recently in the news, Netflix is located there. Maxion Solar, the first solar manufacturing, reshoring, if you will, in New Mexico and perhaps in the United States, very recent, 1,800, 2,000 jobs. All of that based upon TID being available as a means for creating the necessary public infrastructure. In addition to that, I worked with Kim Murphy, who's going to be introduced here in a minute, on the University of New Mexico South Campus TID, which is pretty close to a model for what we're hoping may make sense here, because it was a collaboration between the city of Albuquerque and the University of New Mexico as joint applicants, pretty much as proposed potentially here. And so Kim and I led the efforts from a consulting viewpoint in order to get that TID enacted, and it has been created. The county has participated, and the state now has participated at the fullest amount allowed under law. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Scott.
Thank you, Harry. And if I could, I'd like to introduce Kim Murphy. But before I have him come up, I think it's important to mention here from NMSU's perspective is the reason we're here before you is to ask for an MOU, which basically is asking for us to work together as we move forward. NMSU is going to be expending some considerable sums on this effort, and I think the regents felt like we wanted to make sure that the city was willing to work hand in hand as we move through a lot of these difficult questions. I know you all have these questions that will come up, but these are things that will be developed out as we move through this process. So with that, I just felt like it was important to get the point across that we're trying to be judicious with our funds as we move forward and make sure that we have a partnership that can move forward as we do this. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kim Murphy. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Again, my name is Kim Murphy. In my former life here, I'm retired right now, and consulting, but I was a real estate director at the other institution of higher ed up I-25 for about 25 years. When I retired about 10 years ago, I was tapped by the president to head up the effort to create a TID for, or tax increment development district for UNM South Campus. And as Harry indicated, we formed a team. Harry was a very crucial part of that team, and we were quite successful in working with the city of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, and got it approved in terms of the formation of the TID. And then we went to the State Board of Finance and the state legislature, and was very well received. And in this last legislative session, as Harry indicated, they committed funds that would be dedicated to the TID for public infrastructure. It's important to understand, I believe, you've had proposals before for the TID, so you should understand that the money that goes to the TID is for public infrastructure or public improvements. The proposal today really has two actual models. One of them is right here in Las Cruces, your downtown TID, which you created very early, and as I understand, been widely publicized. It's quite successful. And this other is the South Campus TID at the University of New Mexico. Both of these proposals are really government-driven. I understand that a couple of years ago, you had a private developer propose a TID, and they are different. And they are different because in many cases, the private developer is developing their own plans and presenting them to the municipality, in this case, of course, the city. What we're proposing here is this MOU so that we can collaborate in the development of the plan for development, and also understand what the financial plan is and what the fiscal impacts of the development are going to be. And it's that collaboration that is key. And it's set forth in the MOU in a number of whereases, where it's clear, hopefully, that all we're requesting today is the opportunity to work with you as a governing board, with the regents of the university and with the staff of both institutions to create a proposal and a product that meets the goals and objectives of both entities, but one that is driven by the desire to promote economic development and job creation. Excuse me for a minute here. The university, New Mexico State University, engaged Harry and I a couple of years ago to do a feasibility study. And our goal there was to, at somewhat of a high level, to make some assumptions about the development and do a financial analysis to see what sort of potential there was to create public infrastructure that would support the development. And that feasibility study was presented to the regions late last year and was enthusiastically endorsed, and as Scott has indicated, resulted in them committing some funds for moving forward to work with the city to see if it could be implemented. Fortunately, the University of New Mexico was well on its way to the establishment of the South Campus TID, and so Scott, Wayne, and others at NMSU were monitoring the progress of that project. And so we have a bit of a guide here for us, and as Harry has indicated, we've been through this process. We know the requirements, we know the questions that are going to come up, we know the opportunities and the challenges, and we're eager to work with the city and this body in order to seize this opportunity and use it in a way that can both transform the institution and the city of Las Cruces. Hopefully in your packet, you saw an article that appeared just last week in the Albuquerque Journal that addressed some of the excitement that the South Campus TID has created and highlighted the nature of the public partnership, or what we call the government-to-government collaboration to create the TID. And we would like to engage in a way that we can address all your questions and create that level of excitement within your community. So let me move hopefully through the slides. Try to do this relatively quickly. Again, I know there are questions. We'll be happy to address them to the extent we can. But as I've indicated and Scott has indicated, many questions are still yet to be answered. And we have attempted to answer them in a way that we think makes sense to us, but it really is only when we roll up our sleeves and we work with your staff and with this administration and with your governing body that we can actually craft answers that make sense and are workable solutions for both the institution and the city. So the pending action before us is a non-binding tax increment development district memorandum of understanding. We would like, at the discretion of this body, we would like to see approval of the board, approval of the governing body, if so desired, or if there's a sense that you would like to move forward, perhaps direction to your city manager to move forward with the MOU, and either of those options would be acceptable to us. But we do feel like we need to have the MOU executed so we can work collaboratively together and as I said, answer these questions. So what does the MOU do? It really is a government-driven proposal, similar to the your downtown TID as well as the UNM South Campus. It's non-binding. There are really no commitments other than to work together. And if it proves up that it's desirable to form the TID, that we would do so collaboratively. And it's really a collaborative investigation process. As Scott has indicated, the regions have allocated funds to move forward. And ultimately, we hope it would end up with a joint TID application. Because most of these lands, there's a few exceptions, most of these lands are still within the county. They would have to be annexed to the city, and that would be concurrent with the formation of the TID. We believe that, like with the city of Albuquerque and UNM, that this is an important intergovernmental cooperation that is part of a long-term process. Hopefully not a long-term with respect to the TID, but one that establishes a cooperative working relationship between the institution and the city that can be used moving forward to address a number of concerns. I don't mean to indicate by that the city and the university have not cooperated before, but oftentimes, having worked at UNM for almost 25 years, there's this town and gown kind of relationship between institutions and the cities in which they're a part of or adjacent to that often doesn't create opportunities for working collaboratively together. And we think that the TID, assuming we deem it to be feasible and desirable and that we do move forward and get it formed, that would provide a launching pad for further cooperation. It creates a comprehensive plan for development. Frankly, the university so far has proceeded with a number of projects, principally at Arrowhead Park, on their own, but it's been sort of a, I won't say incremental, but the TID really is an opportunity to take a broader perspective of all these lands and develop a master plan for development that, and the key here is that it can be implemented. You have a city master plan, the university has a campus master plan, but the key here is the TID forces the participants to really show how it's going to be implemented in a way that can be financed and in a way that is fiscally sound. The other thing the TID does is it brings in other parties. It brings in the county and it brings in the state that through the dedication of their share of principally gross receipts tax, but in the case of the county, property tax, they can contribute to the public infrastructure that's actually going to be owned either by the city or by the university. So it leverages the local resources. And ultimately, we're promoting economic development. That's the whole reason behind this. I need to emphasize that as we work through this process, we're going to be coming back and informing the council on our progress, perhaps bringing some solutions forward and getting your input to those solutions. But there's going to be some agreements further down the road. One is the pre-annexation agreement, and the other is the development agreement, which is kind of the last step of this whole planning activity that will need to come before this body and will need to come before the regions. So this is the starting point here. This is nothing more than that. And you'll have an opportunity not only to have input, but you'll have an opportunity to comment on these other agreements as they come forward. I've kind of touched on some of this here in terms of the benefits, but let me just highlight a couple of things. One is that we've looked very carefully at your Elevate Las Cruces plan and have used that as a guide for our development assumptions and our land use assumptions so far. It's very, very helpful, very useful document. The plan, mentions a number of times Aggie Uptown, which is currently in the county. And we're talking with this process to bring that important development opportunity within the city. The other thing is that we'll be able to coordinate, hopefully, the provision of services, public safety, fire, utility development, other infrastructure development. We'll be able to coordinate those between the university and the city. A couple of slides here just highlight the areas that would be included. We're subject to the input of the city on these properties, but they fall into really three main areas. One is the university corridor along main campus, the south side of University Avenue, which we propose really for some infill retail and mixed housing institutional type development. We're anticipating that perhaps some parking structures and amenities that could be established along University Avenue. On the west end, the College of Agriculture has indicated that they'd like to see some community outreach in that area. We've got some exciting ideas about that. You might notice on this plan that we've included some of the athletic facilities and the parking areas surrounding that. It's not anticipated that the TID would fund any athletic facilities itself, but that it would fund maybe some support improvements like beefing up the parking structure, the parking areas, developing landscaping, trails, lighting, other things that could enhance the use of those athletic facilities and enhance the public's enjoyment of those facilities. The other area is Arrowhead Park. We've indicated here some of the land uses that we're proposing there. They're kind of similar to what's there. Wayne Savage has done an outstanding job in bringing resources to that development and have a number of projects that have sort of kick-started that area. The TID will allow him to develop more infrastructure and develop other support improvements that will allow him to accelerate that activity in health education, innovation, digital media, aerospace, and energy water research. And finally, the third area is this Aggie Uptown East Campus area. It involves the relocation of the golf course to an area to the east of where it currently is located, continuing to use the clubhouse as the anchor for that relocation. The relocation would be phased in over time and would free up some land at this very important interchange location on I-25 for some mixed-use commercial housing, hotel, retirement housing, and some institutional uses. We've gotten some input from the planning staff through other departments as kind of a wish list of projects that they would like to see included. And they're listed here, and they're very important, and we're in agreement that they would add a lot to the University Avenue corridor principally, but the campus in general, and those are improvements to University Avenue itself, the convention center expansion, and then an intermodal transit station. By the staff's estimation, these projects would be on the order of $60 million. They are referenced in the MOU as desirable projects. So we're committed to study these further and see how they can be implemented. This slide here really addresses the application process and what our time schedule is. It's largely driven by the schedule of the State Board of Finance. They only consider TID applications twice a year, once in July 1 and January 1. So in order to get to kind of optimize our opportunity to get through the state process rather expeditiously, we'd like to be able to get the district formed, assuming we decide to move forward, get it formed in the by the end of April, so that we can prepare the state application and get it submitted by July 1, get through the State Board of Finance in December of this year, and then be ready for the state legislature next session, which is a 60-day session, which is more desirable than trying to do it during a 30-day session. And let me just backtrack a little bit and just emphasize here as well. We were, with the UNM South Campus TID, we were very pleased to have the support of some key representatives and senators that were very, very instrumental in getting approval through their bodies. And those representatives are aware that the university is in discussions with the city right now on this project. And all indications are that they would be supportive of seeing something move forward. That's important, again, because it leverages state money would come into these public improvements through the TID that normally would not come through a normal appropriation process. And those dollars are significant, and they leverage the roughly 148 million that would come to the TID if we were annexed. And with the county and the state combination, an additional over $200 million would come in for these public improvements. So we're able to leverage financial resources of both the county and especially the state to support public improvements that help the city and help the university drive economic development and job growth. So once again, we'd like to see a consensus of moving forward with allowing us to move forward with your staff to go through the feasibility study more carefully, to understand what all the issues are and be able to formulate some responses to those issues and questions that come up, and be able to come back to you as we go through the various steps to formulate, hopefully, an application for the TID, reserving, obviously, a final approval of any formal action to this body and to the Board of Regents. With that, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, I'd answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, and I apologize for being a little bit late, but I'm here, so that's good. Just a few things. When we sent out the information, and I don't know if I copied you, I copied quite a few people from the university, and there were some questions that I thought we can at least begin to start with, and then open up to my colleagues, because probably a lot of these questions might already be answered by what they want to ask you. But I know that, let's just start from the top, and I know it probably was pretty quick, but and I noticed that you had I guess you've been talking, the regents approved this back in July of approved to move forward with the city. So
Yes, sir.
So the first one says feasibility study for the proposed areas. And I think Councilor Beta we met with you all a couple weeks ago, as that was one of her biggest concerns and questions. Were you able to put anything together, just anything just to give us an idea of where this 200 million was, specifically was going to come from?
Well, yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem. The feasibility study, which I indicated is part of the MOU, and again, this is somewhat high level, but but we believe it's reasonable. It indicates that the city would generate, through gross receipts tax and property tax, would generate a little over $200 million during the life of the TID, which is about 25 years. It's actually 25 years from the first issuance of the long-term bond. Right now, the city of Las Cruces gets no tax revenue, except what it gets out of the Courtyard Hotel and what little bit they might get out of the convention center, which have been annexed into the city. The rest of the land, for a large part, is not within the city limits, and therefore the city collects no gross receipts tax or property tax from this property. So with the TID, these lands would have to be annexed, and they would be the subject of a separate pre-annexation agreement that will address a whole variety of issues. So out of that 200 million, we're proposing 145 million would go through the TID to finance public infrastructure that would be owned by the city or owned by the university.
I'm going to let Councilor Abeyta, since this was her main question, to kind of ask any specific questions on this.
Sure, thank you. I actually wanted to see really the numbers and the methodology that was done to create this feasibility study. Given the research that I've done over the Albuquerque TID and looking to see the types of projects that are being utilized here, we have a lot of investments into research. We have some areas that don't seem to be high yield producing areas, and so that's why I really wanted to look at those numbers and see where they came from. So if that's something that you have available for us today, that's really what I was looking for.
It certainly is available, and we will be, as we move through this project in collaboration, we're going to be performing a whole new financial feasibility study. The one that we created for the university was really just to establish the potential of moving forward. We're not going to rely on what we have done. We're going to be working with your staff and others of our consultants. We're going to have municipal finance people as part of our team. We're going to have bond counsel as part of our team. We're going to have civil engineers that are going to cost out the infrastructure. We're going to have architects that are going to cost out the building improvements. And it's when we have those inputs, which we estimated in the financial feasibility that we did, but when we have those inputs, then we'll be able to show you how gross receipts tax gets generated largely through retail and other kind of commercial businesses. And like the UNM South Campus that proposed quite a bit of commercial and retail development, those gross receipts taxes that they went into infrastructure that actually went into the science and technology park up there. So, and that's where the job creation comes. So we use the gross receipts tax from retail and commercial to actually fund the expansion of the research park, which really is the job creation engine. So I'd be happy to I don't have it right now. I mean, we've got a whole financial model of spreadsheets that we can walk through. But the point is that we're going to do that again. We're going to hire other experts to move forward, and we'll work with your staff, with your finance people, with your municipal development people, and we'll agree on the assumptions. And we'll show you specifically how this project can perform the way we estimated it would perform during our preliminary feasibility study.
Okay, so let's go with Councilor Graham and Como Curran, who had their lights on. So.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all who have presented so far. I'm gonna just kind of give you my primary concern, provide an example, and I recognize, I am kind of looking at the question, Mayor, if you and I are, if we're on the same page, why is the city being asked to invest future taxpayer proceeds in development owned by NMSU? What specifically are the benefits for Las Cruces taxpayers with supporting data? Are we all on the same question list? Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I see, you started to delve into that, and I appreciate it, and I see a list that will be part of the MOU as Exhibit B. And there are some very demonstrable benefits specifically to the university area, definitely in terms of entrepreneurial and job opportunities. But my larger question is, how will this impact the Las Cruces community as a whole? So we have the example of the downtown TID, and obviously the nature of any TID, it is restricted to a certain geographic area, but I think it's pretty clear to see the benefits to the entire community of the downtown TID. I'm a little less clear how people not specifically in the university area are going to benefit from this very significant investment of resources, time, staff time, when we're talking about the proposed NMSU TID. And let me give a specific example. We are really delighted that we have our 2 recent metropolitan revitalization area designations, El Paseo, South Solano Corridor, and the West Picacho Corridor. My fear being, the more we invest in this new development, the less resources, time, bandwidth we have for these projects in which we're already committed to addressing some of the most disadvantaged areas of the city. So that, I recognize that was a lot of words in a larger question of spirit and a specific example of 2 areas that I'm personally invested in, as is in the whole city. How will this support what we're trying to do in other areas?
Oh, Councilor Graham, thank you for that question. This project would not take away from those projects, would not take away from any current project or initiative that you have for any other area of the city. This is new money that would come into the city that you don't already have. And in terms of the vision, it's really set out very well in your Elevate Las Cruces master plan, which calls for Aggie Uptown to be an urban center, an area of future growth and development. It also calls out for Arrowhead Park to be a primary employment district within the city. So this is very consistent with your comprehensive plan, and it actually implements the objectives and goals within your comprehensive plan. But this project takes no money away from any other project, takes no existing tax revenue at all. The process of doing the financial analysis is to set what existing, and the mayor had this question, it sets the existing base of tax revenue from these properties that the city is receiving. And the word increment in the whole TID means that it's only the revenue above that base, that the new money that gets dedicated to public improvements. So we will recognize the existing revenue that's being generated. I don't imagine it's very much, but we would recognize that and make sure that the city continues to receive that money. And only the money above that would be used to fund the public infrastructure. But the bottom line, this takes no money, current money, tax revenue from the city, and dedicates this to any other area of the city or any other project. It's totally new money.
Okay, thank you. I have some more specific detail questions, but Mayor, what I'd like to do is be able to turn it over to my colleagues for the bigger picture, knowing that we're on limited time. Sure. So thank you.
Absolutely. Before you do, can you go back to the map where it showed the proposed TID boundaries and a little bit more, that right there. So I think what you were trying to explain, Mr. Murphy, is the blue area, which is the university area, right now, or at least a strip of University, the city's already receiving gross receipts income. And so if we had a base of, let's say, $1 million that's going into the general fund from that strip, that would be our base. The city would still get that. Just anything above that, then we would get it, the city would then get maybe, say, 25% of all the revenue that's generated outside of the base. Is that what you were trying to say?
Yeah, there would be a percentage, you would, as the governing body, would determine what that percentage is of the new money that's coming into the city that would be dedicated to the TID.
And only because it's germane to what Councilor Graham asked is, so right now, the City of Las Cruces staff is the one who works on the TID projects. So I think using what she was asking, what Councilor Graham was asking, were you expecting the city staff to still work this TID that's going to be here in the university? Does the university have something similar? I don't think you have a community development department. Or can the city, like we've done in other times with, sometimes when we do with the county, sometimes we do with other governments, if we're going to do something, we figure out what the cost is, and then we charge them, say, 3%. This is in addition to all the other, because there's time that staff is going to have to be utilizing. Maybe EFO's going to have to hire some more people, and I think that's what Councilor Graham was also asking. I think she was probably wanting us to know about housing. Well, we'll get to that later. But do you see what I'm saying? As far as if we start taking away staff to work on this TID, is that going to hurt and impact the residents right now who are trying to do other projects in the city and not necessarily outside in this new area?
Well, Mr. Mayor, we would hope that that this body and the administration would be supportive of staff working with us. We have consultants. The university has other departments that would be important resources in terms of their campus planning, university architect, physical plant, utility departments, though, so they would be working with us as well. But we're working toward the goal of creating new revenue out of the development of these properties that doesn't exist right now.
Yes, sir. Harry, you can use that mic if you push down on it if you'd like. Just need you to state your name,
Hope I can figure
please.
this out. Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yes, and just to
I
augment,
just need you to state your name, please.
Harry Relkin, sorry. To augment what Kim said, I'm trying to push.
I just
you
need
hear
you to
me?
get closer to the mic, that's all.
Oh, okay.
You
I'm
can sit
sorry.
down while,
Oh, thank you. Apologize. To augment what Kim said in the regard to the question about staff diversion of time, obviously it will take time working together. That's the purpose of the MOU. First, to just augment, the university and the regions have committed to spend several hundreds of thousands of dollars if the MOU is executed as their contribution above and beyond their own staff time in order to get the right experts to try to answer your questions. But the other thing that is possible, and that we could work
Harry,
through this.
I'm sorry for interrupting. The clerk says it's not being picked up on our recording. Can you come to this main microphone, please?
I must not know how to push a button. I apologize. I'm trying. Anyway, in addition to the university contributing direct cash to get both of us the right experts to help answer all the questions as it moves forward, in addition to that, under the TID law, there is an opportunity to recoup out of the TID revenues administrative cost of creating the TID. So in addition to, we could build that into the TID development agreement that the city, we have to come up with whatever the right way of judging what that is, but the city could be compensated back for its administrative cost in moving forward with the joint effort, as well as, of course, the university.
We'll just call it a cool 2 million right now, and then we'll just go on to the next question. Okay, Councilor Bencomo, and then Councilor Corrin.
Thank you. I think
I have similar questions along the same lines, but I think I would rather hear from staff, if that's okay. For Chris or Ifo, whoever, I think, before we get to this new revenue, there's going to be, so the regents have committed a set of resources for this proposal. What is the required set of resources from the city's part that must be required now before we get to the big, new, shiny revenue?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Bencomo, I believe each department, excuse me, would probably need to speak to that. I know off the top, community development's going to be very involved from a time standpoint with the annexation. And Sarah Gonzalez with the Community Development Department has been working with NMSU on that. So it might be best for her to come up here and give you a bit of a timeline as it relates to community development and those efforts. I know finance would probably have a big role in this as well as public works. So maybe each of those departments can kind of speak to their involvement as they see moving forward.
Honestly, that'd be great, because for me, this is the critical piece and I'll just tell you sort of what I'm trying to get at, because we've committed time, sweat, and tears, if you will, to 2 metropolitan redevelopment areas for 2 critical areas of our city. And to me, this all raises issues of equity, and development for whom is for the question for me. And so between now and, for who? Sorry, for whom? Okay, great. And for between now and the implementation of this potential TID, so there's this 2 pathways, right? This between now and the implementation of this new TID, and between now and the implementation of 2 metropolitan redevelopment areas. To me, that's the concern of capacity. And for me, the priorities are the 2 metropolitan redevelopment areas. So I think that's sort of what I'm trying to get at in terms of staff capacity and resources that must be allocated now.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and councilors, I'm Sarah Gonzalez from Community Development. From a processing standpoint, staff would be looking at approximately about 8 months to do the annexation. The annexation process is very time-consuming in the sense that we do have to work with outside agencies. We are not just working with internal staff. So besides the point that we are also working with Public Works, utilities, fire department, police chief, through all of our resources, we also have to reach out to EBID. We have to work with BLM, State Land Office, and Doña Ana County. They have their own processes in place that also take place where they have their public hearings to let know what's coming into the city limits or how those resources will be reallocated. So we have a time frame also. From the time that we actually receive the annexation, we go through annexation, zone change, and master planning. We want to see all of these into fruition so we understand what exactly the city is bringing into those city limits and how they'll be processed through the actual implementation, and then how they'll be done through the construction portion. So there will be multiple departments, multiple staff members, as well as multiple entities outside helping us through this process.
Okay. Can you go back to the portion in your presentation where you have your timeline, please? And thank you, Sarah. Oh, there we go. Wow, Sarah, good job. Okay, so you're saying it would take 8 months to do the annexation process, and their timeline is City Council would approve annexation by April 2024. Is that what you're hoping that would happen? Okay, so can you talk a little bit about this discrepancy in time here?
I think from the timeline presented, we would be looking at, I know there is a discussion about a pre-annexation, which I'm not sure how that follows or how that would follow through our legal team, if that's something we are able to do. But with that, we would be looking at documents being submitted, very shortly. We don't have boundaries, we don't have property zoning, so with that timeline, we would be looking at probably a couple months after meeting that deadline, unless we were putting staff onto a limited time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor and City Council, annexation's a process we have ordinances in place, and so really, we have to follow those deadlines. Once it's submitted, then we do the review and it goes through. So Sarah was giving you just a general, what a normal annexation would take place. So really, that process needs to be initiated, and then the steps need to take place for it. So it's rather difficult for us to give you a definitive timeline today.
Thank you for bringing up the annexation policy. I was sort of reviewing that in preparation for today. And I know as part of that process, the city must lead a fiscal impact analysis. It has to go through P&Z. It has to go through some public input process, right? So for a project this size, and I'm going to ask you a big question, and you might not have the answer, but I really think it's important to ask it. What do you think the sort of dollar commitment that an annexation process would take? About how much do you think it would cost?
Mayor, City Council, I apologize, David Weir, Community Development Department. I don't have an estimate for that, on that cost. Staff time was something that would be just a part of the community development's budget. Any outside study, we would have to get someone to take a commitment on that. So you're probably talking a minimum of $25,000 for that fiscal analysis. And then it's just, and that's a minimum and a ballpark figure.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you, David, for those questions. Yeah, and then I also have a bunch of other questions on the pre-annexation language, but because I also want to pass it along to I have many, many questions. I did want to raise that, thank you, David, I think that's it for on your part. There's a part in the presentation that I wanted to just read real quick that I think for me was sort of raising the equity flags. There's a part in the presentation that says, there's no numbers on here, so I apologize, but it's under real estate market opportunities. It says, Aggie Uptown and Arrowhead Park can capture a significant portion of this growth, with NMSU being the region's leader in higher education and employment proximate to several neighborhoods with the highest household income and net wealth. And so for me, I think, as I think about what I'm sort of hearing, is I would be all hands on deck in order to meet some of these deadlines that then would further push our priorities for these two MRAs that are trying to have an impact on the quality of life of a very different population in our community. And so for me, I think as I think about the timing of this, I think it's just, to me, it doesn't feel right as I think about the priority we've placed on implementing our two MRAs. And, not too long ago, several months ago when we implemented them, I heard from staff that they were concerned that we wanted to do two MRAs, that there was a concern of capacity for us really, and this council pushed on that, and we said we really feel like these two MRAs are critical to the quality of life of our community, and staff said, look, there's capacity issues. So now we're saying we're adding this third very big project to that, and so I do have concerns that this would push what I consider two of our biggest priorities right now, which is the implementation of these two MRAs. So I'll leave it there. If you would like to respond, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts on that.
Councilor Benkama, the only thing is, I would say, certainly those are very important and valuable additions to your community, to the entire community. I would just go back to your comprehensive plan that recognized that as an institution, New Mexico State University is a major employer in this area and will continue to grow. I understand they're, according to Scott and Wayne, that their enrollment is very much improved this year. And they're an economic engine for the whole south part of the state.
Absolutely.
And this TID would provide additional opportunities for the university to expand their footprint and create opportunities for the entire population.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I do have concerns that we're creating opportunities for a pretty specific set of folks in the community. Because I would love to continue collaborating with New Mexico State University on things like, I just read an article, the fentanyl crisis is ravaging college campuses. I would love an opportunity to work with NMSU on how we tackle that. I would love to work with NMSU on how we tackle issues of student homelessness, right? So there are different, absolutely, areas where I believe that we can collaborate in a much more meaningful and strategic way. Not that this is not meaningful. I just, again, I have serious concerns about the equitable nature of this project.
I would only say, Councilor Bencamo, having worked at the University of New Mexico for 25 years, I understand all those things that you just
Excuse me, Mr.
mentioned.
Murphy, can you get a little bit closer to the mic, please?
Oh, yeah. I understand your perspective, and I appreciate it very much. Universities do lots of things, do many, many, many things for the community, both in terms of social benefits, social uplifting of various populations. Just the fact that you can enroll in an institution of higher ed now, particularly with our support for tuition and so forth that the state is providing, those things are tremendously beneficial. But the point is that the universities do so many, many, many things that this project would not take away from any of those initiatives that you mentioned that the university decided to work on or are working on currently. This is just another special focus that we think would be mutually beneficial to the university, to the city, and to the entire region. Not taking away from those initiatives that occur daily in the various departments and research organizations within the institution.
Okay, before I get to Councilor Corin, just a couple things, and I appreciate the comments made by my colleagues, but I just want to kind of circle back that the MRA, which for those in the audience or those listening, stands for Metropolitan Redevelopment Area. And I think a couple of the key items with besides taking an area to rehab or redevelop it, and also to build community building, but also a big part of that is economic development. So I think this lends itself to increasing the overall per capita, and that's one of the things that we charge EVA with, is bringing in business to raise the level of income here of our residents. And so I don't think it was necessarily just saying this is just for this area here, this area that's being proposed. I mean, everyone's eligible to get a job and work at these areas, and if we can lift that up, I think is what the key is. And I appreciate the comments that were made. I just wanted to just touch on that a little bit. Councilor Corin.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I also want to echo the same concerns about capacity within the city and diverting resources, not just of city staff, but then of future businesses considering the area. I think that creating a competitive environment where businesses and housing may be attracted to a different kind of folks, I think that us subsidizing that is problematic. But my questions are really more for Scott, probably. They're related to land use and community input, specifically to the use of the land. Did you know NMSU is in the top 10 land grab universities? The native land that they've taken from folks in New Mexico has contributed about $20.5 million to the university's budget over time. I provide that as context because as recently as April of 2023, faculty and students at NMSU were questioning the campus master plan, how it was vetted, and who was included in that process. I'm hoping you could describe how it was vetted and how many people participated in it. You all sort of mentioned our Elevate Las Cruces plan, which had over 4,000 individual participants who contributed to it and really helped us understand what our community was looking for. I don't have a sense that this happened with the campus master plan because a number of the land uses have been objected to by both tribes in the community and students and faculty at NMSU. So I'd be curious, since that will be the primary sort of guide, and it's from the initial MOU, it appeared that the city processes for public input would not apply to this annexed part. I'm curious, where was the community input in the campus master plan, and could you describe the specifics of that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Karan, I believe you were on, were you on the employee council at the time?
Faculty Senate, yes.
Yeah, Faculty Senate, I apologize. And And also, we had Counselor Graham, who worked with us on, I remember working directly with you on writing the master plan. You know, we did the master plan, I believe.
I was
in-
just a technical editor, but I was there, yeah.
Yeah, you were certainly there. I believe we did that in 2017. Is that about right on the date? We did our master plan in-house, and as you recall, during that time frame, we were really struggling with funds. So typically, this is something that would go out, and we'd hire a national firm or, you know, a big firm to come in and do this, but we were challenged economically. So it was a monumental effort to do it in-house. And so we worked through facilities, we worked vetting, but to say that the master plan was run through the community of Las Cruces, no, it was a master plan that was run through the university system and was approved through, the final approval came through the Board of Regents. And that's how that plan was done. Speaking about the Native Americans' concerns, I know that we've had meetings, myself and Wayne Savage and others, and trying to understand what those concerns are and how do we mitigate those concerns. I think a lot of it has to deal with Tortugas Mountain, which is a sacred area for the Native American communities here in town, and obviously they brought some new perspective for me, helping to understand what that is. But it's basically, that's a sacred area, and what you'll see in these development plans is that we'll hold those grounds sacred, and we will not develop on the mountain. We'll develop some areas that may be at fairly close proximity. Those are areas that have already been developed. It's where our rodeo team is. It's where our engineering has some research projects. It's where ag has research projects up there. We don't anticipate getting any closer to the Tortugas Mountain. So I hope maybe I've helped answer a little bit of the question. I'm happy to clarify if I haven't.
And just to clarify, in the original MOU that we saw the last time this was going to come forward, it said that that all community input would be dictated by the university processes, not the City of Las Cruces processes for land development, correct?
Well, I think what the regents have said is that they're concerned about land use planning. That's still a state entity, and under state statute, the regents are in control over that land. So they would like to have the final say, or have say, and in coordination with the city and working together, what the final use would be. But since it's under state statute that the regents are in control of that land, the regents are expecting to have the final say on developments that occur in there with the input from the city.
Input that would look like?
Well, I think just part of our collaboration. We'll probably prepare an update. We're working on updating our master plan. That would certainly come with input from the city. We'd like to have some folks we'll have community development maybe sit on that committee and help us work through that, and how can we collaborate that way moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
And just to kind of add to that, so I think and I think I brought this up when we first met, as far as one of the things that the council is wanting to do has mentioned to utilities on any new areas is that they be pretty much all electric construction, as far as utilities. Plus, it's cheaper, and that's one thing there that I think this. I can't speak for them, but I think it'd be strongly wanted to be adhered to. I mean, as far as you all trying to figure out what area is going to go there, sure, of course, it has to be in collaboration with us both. But I think that's a big key and I think the areas that you're out there are some gas already been laid out.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you have to hook up to it, you know what I mean? So I think that's going to be really crucial. And what I was thinking also is we could probably invite a member of from Tortugas to be able to at least have a chance to just kind of sit at the table and just kind of make sure that we're being respectful to some of their concerns. And I just want to say, if I didn't mention it before, that if we do move forward with this non-binding MOU, it allows both the university, but more importantly, the city to direct EFO to have his staff figure out a lot of these questions. Because it can still come back and the council can say, no, we're not going to do it. But without, because this is a lot of work. And so that's why they needed to have something written for EFO to have to say, okay, now you can use the staff to start doing the resources. So I just want to be very clear, that when it says non-binding MOU, they're still going to have to bring something back to council. Most likely, it'll be after I leave, but nonetheless, it's up to council then to approve it, to move it even further. This is just to get them, to get both staffs working together, to start figuring out, is this something here that's going, how much is going to cost, and things of this nature. I just wanted to point that out, that's all. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have any questions? Councilor, okay. Councilor Abeyta?
Thank you. Along the lines that we were going for, and what you just mentioned as far as who would be kind of in control of sort of this process, I do have a question that once the land is annexed, does that then mean that all, and this is probably for staff, that all city policies and ordinances need to be followed within that TID?
Here, if you want to come forward to the podium. Looks like you're just can't wait to answer that question. Just need you to state your name again.
I don't know if I can't wait or not, but the question is here, and I think it's a good one. Mr. Mayor.
Just state your name again.
Council Harry Relkin, I'm sorry. That's an excellent question on land use and ultimate control. A good example to look at, I think, is the UNM South Campus TID. The big difference between it and this one, other than one's in Albuquerque and one's UNM and one's in Las Cruces and one's New Mexico State, which is enough difference in and of itself, but the big difference is that land was already annexed into the city. Almost all of UNM's campuses have been annexed in. And the way it works from a legal is a bit of a dance, because state law says local government cannot zone state, okay? But they have had to work collaboratively in order to meet the needs of the development of the campus and the campus areas. And in the TID example, what gets developed under an MOU almost identical to the one we're proposing to you, except this one to you references the annexation issue, because it didn't exist when the MOU was created with UNM and the city of Albuquerque. There has to be developed a TID master plan that describes land uses, not each little building, but overall land uses, that then will come back to you and to the regents for approval. So there will be a master plan for the TID area that you will be seeing, that hopefully the city has had input in under the city's guidelines and the university under its goals and guidelines, and we come up with something in terms of that master plan that works for both entities. That's the value of the collaboration. And that's how land use would be evolved. The university maintains land use control, but for the TID, to get the TID revenues, it'll have to comport with the TID master plan. So it actually requires long-term cooperation between the two entities to make it work. And just as a side, and we recognize that at UNM Albuquerque, and we set up a working group to continue the process going forward with any of the development there, made up of both city and university.
Thank you, and I see Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilors, I think the city may have a little difference of opinion. I'm not going to make any legal statement here. I leave that up to your lawyer to explain to you what I'm not a lawyer myself.
She's your lawyer too.
She's my lawyer too, but she very much is going to advise you on the legalities of this one. But it's my understanding under our code that private development is under the purview of a city when it comes to issues of what can be developed where and so on. They're absolutely correct. When it comes to university issues and things that are operational issues for the university, the city has no say in how they operate. And we wouldn't ask to have any of that, at least community development would not. But when it comes to issues like alcohol licensing, where someone can have, let's say, a cannabis facility, where someone can have those sorts of things, the state is going to ask you for approval on those things. It's going to ask to come through the city on those things. This is the way we handle it on lots of university property right now. For instance, the Pan Am Center is all university property, but those are all permitted through the city. They go through business registrations with the city, and so on. We work very closely with the university. We have no interest in going against what their goal is, but you're the land use authority for the city of Las Cruces, and if it's city property, it's private development is under your purview. So that's my understanding of how things are. As I say, there's probably some difference of opinion, but I believe that I can work with Scott's office very closely to make sure that we're all in agreement on what we're doing is working properly for both sides.
Dr. Pitts, before you leave, just to kind of tell on one of the questions, so if needed, so that the two MRAs are still intact and staff moving forward, if needed, and you heard that it could be reimbursed, the city possibly then could hire additional staff to help with, to help Sarah and whomever is going to be, if we're moving in this direction, to help get this going.
I'll say, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Tim Pitts again. What I'll say is I think that this is really a financing opportunity for infrastructure. It's not really about land use. It's not really about these other things, at least at this moment. That's what we're looking at. How are we going to finance the infrastructure along University and in the Aggie Uptown area and perhaps down into the Arrowhead area? How are we going to finance that? Is it going to come through a TID, or is the city going to contribute something, or it could be state appropriation, or how is that going to get financed? We can always, if staff currently is not being asked to do anything outside of our normal day-to-day operations. If someone came in with even 1,000 acres they wanted to annex into the city, we'd have the same process. We probably can't meet their timelines. I can be pretty clear about that right now. It'd be very, very difficult just to meet the timeline, but we can get it done. It's just whether it's on the dates we see here, or it's a month later, or but in terms of that, staff currently is not being asked to do anything that wouldn't be just a normal daily operation. If we were asked to do more, so say that comes into the issue of financing the, if our public works department were helping design the streets, for instance, yeah, we might need more staff to be able to accomplish that.
Okay, thank you for that. And I have two checklists here, so let me just check one off here. Sarah mentioned about Doña Ana County, and that's true, because I think, I don't know if it's changed, but they still require a 1 month notice of an annexation, so I heard her talking about timelines, so I just wanted to check this off my list here. So, thank you. Councilor Beta, you have any further questions?
Yes, I had a couple, and it really related to the financing aspects, so I think that's within our city staff. You know, a lot of these projects look to be pretty high dollar, so I'm assuming that would need to be bonded out. Yeah, I'm seeing a head shake, yes. So with that, you know, it's the reason why I asked for the feasibility study and really like the look at what that yield would be, because if you're going to be bonding, I'm curious if the TID doesn't produce the type of money that is expected to generate, what is that liability? What does that look like for even our bond ratings at the city?
Mr. Counselor, or Mr. Mayor, Councilor Beta, I'm going to turn that question over to Leanne Demush, who's Finance Director. She could probably answer those questions a lot better than I can.
Thank you.
So Mayor, Councilor Beta, I'll try to, our downtown TID that we have is the only one that I'm aware of. And we actually did what is called sponge bonds, and I'm looking at the mayor because he probably remembers these. The TID was, I mean, we already had a very well-developed area, and we had gross receipts coming into the area and also property taxes. So we had a very good financial base, and as you stated earlier, this is new money, and you're correct, but it's new money that will be going into the TID, not into the city. So the TID, if this is a city TID in collaboration with the NMSU, and that's what I'm assuming this is, then it's the TID that would go after the bonding. It really wouldn't affect the city, but there's probably would be a need for us to maybe work with our bond counsel and work with, with our financial advisor to see if there's like special funding that we can go after where maybe the first couple of years we may not pay principal or interest. I mean, there's creative things that we might be able to do, but the bonding would be under the TID and not under the city. And I'm looking at my treasurer to hopefully she's going to say yes, because that's the way our current TID is. And we did have sponge bonds, but what happened was the bonding went to the city. The TID turned around, and in one day, we paid that bond off, and that was how we bonded. And the only reason we did that was because in the plan, the master plan that we had for the TID, we said that we would do that. And so we had the capability and the financial ability to do those sponge bonds. So this would be totally different. And so it would be the TID that would be taking on that financial burden.
Thank you. And there is then no liability on the city if the TID does not generate enough money to pay off those bonds?
Mayor, Councilor Beta, that would be my assumption. It's something that we probably would need to work with our bond counsel on, since the only TID that I have ever worked on is the downtown TID. But from reading what I have read on TIDs, I think that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Urbeta, I just would echo that. These bonds that would be issued would be in the name of the TID. They would be solely the obligation of the TID. They would not impact the city. They would not impact the city's credit rating.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I would, I know there's some concerns about what type of stress this would put on the city system if we were to move forward. I would be very interested to seeing what that looked like as far as staff time, really, and that's a cost, right, as well. So looking at what the staff time is, what type of funding would be necessary for the feasibility study, a true one. I'm sure the city wants to have that on our end if we're looking at projects. And then seeing as this project would be divided, the monies are going to be allocated very differently from what NMSU is going to receive to what the city would receive, is to really look and see any sort of costs, if that's reflected as well, so that the NMSU is paying, if it's a 75-25 split, that NMSU is always paying the 75% of whatever is needed for those types of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And if I may, before I get to Mayor Pro Tem, so just remember about a 10-to-12 ratio. So like, for example, if the TID brings in $1 million a year, probably they won't bond more than 10 times that, so 10 million, 12 million, because that money that's coming in is what's going to pay the bonds. So unless there's money there, the city can do some other things, but I would strongly, if it were me, just wait until the money's there, and then that's when you start. It's like paying for something when you can afford it instead of just paying it out. So, all right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for being here. Always exciting to collaborate with my alma mater. I appreciate it so much, always trying to find ways to do that. I have a few questions about the timing. I think you're asking us to decide something, even though it's an MOU, and I'm interested to know what dates were you already internally having this conversation, and when did you present to the regions, and how many times did you present to the regions? I'm really interested in those dates.
Mayor Tim, Gordana,
Gandara?
Gondola, apologize. We met earlier this year. Scott, maybe you could answer that question better than I can.
Yes, Scott Eschenberger again, Mayor Pro Tem Gondra. This has been an evolving process. I think we actually came and met with the city 5 or 6 years ago when we first started thinking. I've been with the university for 8 years.
Okay.
So this has been something that's been ongoing. We also have what we call a Regents Real Estate Committee, which is made up of 2 Regent members, some others from within the university, and 4 community members as well. I think that's important to point out. That we've been having these conversations back and forth with this committee, this real estate committee. I'd say easily 4 or 5 years, and just trying to figure out, is this the right direction for us to go? Your question about bonding is certainly one that has come up with NMSU. We don't want to do anything to jeopardize our bond rating, and same with the city. So these are all very similar questions that we've been dealing with and trying to work our way through. We've off and on have brought this to the regents in executive session to discuss. The final approval came, I think, as you see on here, on July 17th in public session meeting. But to say that it's just been going on for the last 6 months, this has been going, I've been there 8 years, and I think it's something that I've been working on for the majority of my time at the university. It's been an evolving process. I think one of the things that's also important to note is that we knew UNM was more or less out in front, right? Breaking the water for us and just seeing where the rough spots were. And to see that they had a tremendous success, not only with the city of Albuquerque, but also with the state, really kind of helped form our opinion to try and think that this is an ability to move forward. I'm reminded that we all have a lot on our plate, and I promise you I have an awful lot of plate, and city staff does as well. It'd be easy not to do this, right? It'd be easy to say, let's not go down this road. But I think the rewards are so much more worth it when you look at the potential. And I'm reminded of downtown Las Cruces. Before I went to work for the university, I owned an office building right behind the Black Box Theater. And when the mayor came on, this was one of the first things that came out. I was like, how the heck is this going to help the city? The challenge is it doesn't help right in the beginning. It's a slow evolving process. To the mayor's point, you build up a bank account, don't you? You try and build up some funds, and over time you try and target a few little projects here and there. Well, now you've had tremendous success. You're 20 years into it, and you're able to go out and do some big projects and bond some big items and make some major impacts. This TID wouldn't be much different, I think. It's going to be slow in the beginning, but the benefits that we'll be able to look at, I hope 15, 20 years down the road, will speak volumes for the efforts that we put forward to move forward with this.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. You know, we've been a part of the TID for 8 years. I mean, there were a lot of work. That was a lot of work even before I got here. I kind of just landed and started to come to groundbreaking and ribbon cutting of the plaza, and then we started to see the fruits of our labor, right? So I understand that part. Many of us weren't on this council. You have a transition of staff. And so I just want you to know it gives us pause when it gives me pause when you present something like you do, and I'm thinking, many of the questions and the comments of my colleagues very eloquently put forth is stuff that I'm concerned about. We're just seeing this, some of us, for the first time. And so, we've had other TIDs. We understand it's government to government. We had an individual outfit that we hired, Strategic Economics, to come and really analyze the TID prior to, but also give us some lessons learned and what we should be asking for. And so I'll ask by you all, is that I think that we want to see projections and what those public improvement costs, a feasibility study, a finance plan. I want our bonding, our legal counsel to really look at that, before we say, this is feasible, this is what we think needs to happen. I think there's some great things in this plan that you have put out, particularly on the south side, where our convention center is, where our MRA will be matching up to university, where I would say this would be great. This would be a priority for me, because it lands very nicely with all the plans that we have for that particular area. And the update to university, I think, as you know, you're in the thick of it right now. But it would be a complete rehab, I think. David, is he here? David Cedillo? I think they took off. Yes.
Hi, Adrienne
Hi,
Whitmer,
Adrienne. Thank you.
Utilities Director, and Tony had to leave,
Okay.
but they would definitely take a look at that, and that's some of the stuff that we were talking about, and I think with the collaboration within MSU to see what kind of reconstruction would need to occur and where the funds would be coming from would definitely be something that Public Works would be looking close at and collaborating with the university.
Thanks, Adrian, because I had some water questions and things of that sort. Because when we do that, we're putting down all new, water systems and conduit and whatnot. What are your thoughts about what that cost would look? Because I think you have somewhat of an idea of what it's going to cost to rehab that area specifically.
Mayor, Councilor Gondra, in looking at that, right now, most of the university has been rehabbed.
Okay.
As you noticed, so there's been already upgrades for water, sewer, and natural gas in that area. I think we would definitely be sitting down with NMSU to see what the increase in water use and what kind of wastewater flows and how that would either affect our current plant or plans for an additional plant maybe on the southern side, how all of that would work out. So I think it's just a matter of sitting down and doing some collaboration with them to see what they have in mind. Depending on the type of uses will then also affect what kind of water use will be used and what kind of wastewater use will be coming down.
Adrian, and as you heard that they're going to move the golf course over, I think you have your own water
Yes,
rights, yes?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Gondra, we do have our own water rights. We do have our own water system. The only area, we have utilized some of the city's resources with Aggie Uptown. We built that to city standards and coordinated all that with the city with respect to that area. But the main campus is supplied by the NMSU Public Works area.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I am concerned. I think there's a number of things that need to happen prior to us entering into, and I would say if it's the will of council to move into an MOU that that these things need to be done. I don't think we have the capacity to do it in the timeframes that you're putting out here. But I feel like there's a lot there to uncover, and I don't think we've even talked to I haven't talked to Linda about what the legal ramifications are, or our bounding counsel, and those are all things that I think need to be discussed. And I mean, it's a report that we paid for that says we should do all that before we enter into a TID. And it's not, and not that we're entering into a TID, you're asking us to enter into an MOU to sit down and have the conversation. And so continue to be concerned about that because of the capacity that has already been discussed. We have a number of projects, and I'm interested in the south side. Not sure that you're interested in that as a priority, number one priority, but I'm certainly interested in that, and it would fit very nicely, and I would say if we're gonna do this, that's where I think we need to start. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so I appreciate everyone's comments. Let me just kind of review a few things some notes I took. First off, and let me just state, this is what they refer to as a non-binding MOU. So, and in order for the city, for us to direct EFO to have his staff start working on this has to be passed. It doesn't mean that we're committed. It just means this is what triggers the EFO to move forward with the team. And if after it comes back in a few months, council at that time says no, okay, well, at least we gave it a shot. But I have to say that let's take Intel, for example. They moved to Rio Rancho They utilize a lot of subsidies, a lot of grants or awards that the state gave, and unfortunately, they had to reduce their capacity. This is a university, one of the top universities for engineering college, and if they can attract good businesses, high-paying jobs that our residents can utilize, that's what we want. I mean, that's what we want. And here's an opportunity to use a mechanism that the state has given us for economic development to be able to generate the income needed to do what I think all of us want to see here is that reduce the number of percentage of those in poverty and raise the level of income to our residents. So I really think that we should, at the very minimum, sign on to this non-binding MOU. However, I've written down notes here. In that, if the council was to move forward, these have to be addressed, gentlemen. We have to know whether or not, and I think Evel's going to talk about capacity, but in the event we needed to hire additional staff, I think it was mentioned, it can be reimbursed. We need to include someone from the Tortugas Pueblo. That all electric development has to be addressed. As Mayor Pro Tem was talking about, I think and you know, Linda does a great job, but I don't know but as that book you were talking about, the potential lessons learned by Dana Belzer and Daniel Hernandez, if we can contract with a lawyer that specializes in TIDs to make sure that the city's interests are taken care of, you know, because those will be reimbursed. So those are the minimum that I have written. One thing I just want to make sure, and this is something that the city needs to look at, I can't remember, or maybe you might know, Harry, is if it's going to require a supermajority for the TID. I can't remember when we did the TID years ago, but that's just something, just because there could be one member of the council who may feel that they want to just not move forward. Okay, athletics. I don't have a problem with athletics. I don't know why we didn't want to include them. I mean, we've got something to think about. I mean, not right now, but I don't see why we can't include that. I mean, we've got a lot of momentum right now in New Mexico State athletics, and that helps generate publicity for the university, for the city, and it's fun, you know, and it's good. Anyways, that's what I've got here. Ifo, you wanted to talk a little bit about capacity?
Mayor, Council, thank you. Just a couple thoughts in addition to that. No, Mayor, maybe first of all, I just want to assure the council that just about all the questions that you've asked have been brought up by staff. So we have the same questions. We've even brought it up in our meetings. I've realized that there's so many points in this process for this to go off the rails. So, I mean, there's so many, this is the first, but there are a lot of deal breakers that on both sides. So from the city side, I'll tell you a couple of deal breakers is if we benefit less than what this costs, right? For them is if we take control over any, you know, their land use, and I know that's a deal breaker probably for their regions. And so there's a lot of opportunity we have to take this deal, like I said, off the rails. And so the only reason why we're even, as staff, even, you know, showing support to bring it forward is none of those conversations happen without this non-binding MOU. And so just so you know, our eyes are wide open. Like I said, there's some issues that were brought up today that weren't brought up, which is good to have the feedback. But for the most part, we've discussed this. We've discussed this internally, and we don't have the answers yet. And so, but we do realize that if we stop here, then we'll never get there. We'll never have the opportunity to discuss. And then going to capacity, one thing I want to be careful, in speaking on behalf of staff, I don't want the message to be out that we can't handle, because we're just getting started. And so there are projects all over that we want and that we're going to continue to go after. There's big economic development projects, there's affordable housing projects, of course the MRA, there's all kinds of things, but we want to turn up the heat, we want to keep going, and we want to keep moving. And so if this goes off the rails now or whatever, I just don't want the message to ever be a question of capacity, because I think our staff can handle it. We just need to get the resources if that's determined. And again, the TID should pay for that. TID should pay for any resources that we have to acquire in order to move forward. And so we're gonna demand that as well as you have. But you know, bringing a project of this size shouldn't be a strain, because we want to bring bigger. We want to keep going, and we want to elevate the city in all aspects. Like I said, not only in tax increment projects, not only in economic development projects, but I mean, we have thousands of affordable housing projects that need to come through. And I want to make that very clear that we are ready. We are open for business. And so if this is going to go off the rails, I don't want it to go off the rails because we think we don't have the capacity, because I believe we do. But like I said, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And it may be quicker, or maybe not. Maybe we'll get through this, but there might be a deal killer subsequent to this meeting when we start talking about, you know, how much reimbursement, or I personally don't want a bond. I really don't. I don't want a bond if we don't have some type of revenue source coming in on a consistent basis that shows that we can handle the bond. And so there's a lot going on in this, but we don't ever get to that. We don't get to that if we don't have this simple, non-binding MOU. And so that's the only reason, again, going back, I know I've maybe beating a dead horse now too, but that's the only reason we've even, like I said, we've even thought about bringing this forward at this point. But regarding capacity, as you've talked about, we can handle it.
Thanks, Ivo. I do have a quick question, if someone can answer this. So this money that's generated for the university, does that go to, I don't know, for lack of a better word, their general fund to help with their costs? Because you're seeing more and more universities struggling to bring in revenues from all sources, whether it's from the state, whether it's through tuition, things of this nature. Would they be able to, if this was to work, would they be able to at least benefit through that way as well?
Scott Eschenberger again, Mayor Miyashima. We're challenged, not unlike y'all, and every year the pie gets a little smaller. Fortunately, the last couple of years at state legislature, it's been pretty good. But NMSU is blessed with an abundance of land that not many universities have, but it's an underutilized resource. And that's part of the reason I was hired on back 8 years ago, was to try and find ways to convert this into revenue streams. So it's a way to help augment our mission, which is educating and community outreach. And that's what we'll continue to do with these funds.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. You know, and the reason why, and I don't want to be, you know, I've been very fortunate. I've had 4 kids go to Mexico State, and I would see how, you know, I would watch, you know, this tuition going up, you know, every time. And there's times where, you know, it gets costly. But by doing so, I'm glad to hear, by doing so, if it was to move forward and start working, that helps the university's coffers to help take the burden off of constantly putting on the backs of the students and the parents who pay for it. So I'm just curious, that's all. That's good to hear. I want to know if it went to a special enterprise fund that wasn't touched, and no, it can't be used to help augment the budget. So
I have some questions, Mayor.
yes,
For Ivo mostly.
Okay.
Just a couple of thoughts as well. I mean, this could be for you as well, Mayor, and for Linda. But I mean, I think we're also not taking into consideration that this governing body is in transition currently. And so we're sort of making this really big decision that a brand-new council has to see through. That's, I think, slightly unfair. And while it's not as big as hiring a new city manager, I remember 4 years ago, the outgoing city council waited till there was a new city council to hire a new city manager, which felt really appropriate. This is a significant fiscal investment that this is not small potatoes, right? I mean, it's not. And so we're asking a really big question to a governing body that is in transition. That's number one. Number two, you said there were some non-negotiables. I think for me, it's really important to understand the non-negotiable you mentioned on the cost benefit to the city. Like, I have so many questions, and we schedule this on a 10 o'clock before another meeting, and it just feels like we're not being given enough time to answer all the questions that I have. Like, I have so many questions about the environmental impacts of the golf course moving. I have questions about the annexation process, and maybe I'm naive, but I just don't understand how we annex land. The city will then be responsible for the maintenance, the utilities, all of that, yet the city will not have governing power over that annexed land. Like, to me, that's really hard to sort of swallow. And so I have all of these questions that then I'm being asked to decide on in 2 weeks. To me, that's sort of and I understand this timeline, but it just feels, there's a sense of urgency that I understand, but I hope that you understand why, to me, it feels really heavy to then turn around in 2 weeks. So I don't know, Aoife, what you think about those things. Oh, and then the third thing is there's been very little public input on this, right? The downtown TID, what was the process for that downtown TID to come into fruition? And for the Royal Crossing TID, there was a lot of public comment.
Mayor, Councilor Bencomo, it was a lot. There was a survey, I think, that was actually done. We actually had to take it out to vote. This is a little different, though. This is barren land in MSU, so I know that there probably might be some contact on part of the area where there's some private locations. But it was almost, I want to say, a 3-year process. If Mayor, you were probably the only one that was around. I think we started this in 2006, and it finally started about 2009. So,
and I'm not saying it has to be a 3-year process. I don't think it can be a 2-week process, frankly. And I think thank you, Leanne, first of all. And then, this idea of the public input. I've heard from a couple of folks about the new gas station that's going up at Aggie Uptown and the surrounding area. Not everybody is excited about that, right? And so there's already been sort of tension that's been rising between community members and the way that some of this is being developed. And so I think more tension will continue to build if there is no opportunities for public input.
Let me just state one thing, and I'll let Ifo talk. Councilor, the November 6th is the action on this non-binding MOU. Today's meeting is just to vet some of the concerns that council has, so that when the eventual actual vote for a TID, which would take place sometime next year, comes to being, these should be incorporated or probably won't go. So that November 6th is just to get the council to pass a resolution for them to use for their application, and then for that to get the ball started. But there's going to be another approval, and I think there it is on April 2024, more or less, for the actual vote on a TID. So this is just to get staff engaged, working with the university to answer some of these questions that many of you have provided. And I was just writing down some of these things so that they would have a record of what it is that council was concerned about.
I mean, Mayor, the way I read the MOU is we are saying we are committing a set of resources to this plan. And sort of my biggest concern hasn't really been addressed yet, which I think staff would need time to look it over around. Given this timeline, the resources they would take to implement this TID and what that would do to the planned implementation of our 2 MRAs. That's a big question I would like answered. But to me, the MOU isn't just like this non-binding MOU. To me, it's still a commitment, so I just wanted to note that.
Mayor, Councilor Bencomo, yeah, I probably, my response is similar to what the mayor was saying. I mean, I agree with you, Councilor. I wouldn't suggest that you approve anything that creates the TID, certainly not before a new council and something of that magnitude. The only thing, like I mentioned, this is, if you're willing to consider a non-binding MOU, I really don't think there is much commitment. I don't think we're not saying much besides, when you talk about when it talks about committing resources, it really is staff time. But I think anything worth, anything with the potential of being worth something to the city, we should look at it. We should commit staff time to do it. But as far as anything of substance that you're going to approve, I wouldn't suggest that. I wouldn't suggest you do it within a 2-week period. I wouldn't suggest you approve anything based on information you have right now. Because we still, and them as well, we still have things to duke out before we even bring it back to you for consideration. Like, there's nothing we would not bring anything to you with all these unanswered questions and just throw it on you to do that. I totally get where you're coming from, and were it not for this MOU that from staff's perspective, and we've talked about, I'll be very open with you, this MOU is probably less important to us than it is to them in going back to the regions and say, hey, you did one, the city's done one, and so this will allow us to commit resources. And so this isn't that important to us. It's really so that they can go back and say, you know what, the city's at least going to be willing to commit time. They're going to be willing to at least look at this. But like I said, there are a lot of unchecked boxes that we need to go down the list on, and I don't think there's any approval, like I said, or there's anything of substance that this MOU gives us, or as far as commitment. But to be honest, we will commit resources in the way of staff time. And the thing is, I think somebody mentioned this earlier, we'll get projects all the time, and that's just part of our responsibility, whatever project comes forward. The upside to this, if this all checks, at least I can speak for my own boxes, if the upside is pretty high. However, I don't know if that's going to take us off the rails anyway. And I'm sure every one of us up here has boxes that we need to check, and they all obviously need to be checked before we do that. Going back to the MRAs, that is our number one priority when it comes to redevelopment. I don't think it takes away, I think you're talking about staff time. There will be, obviously, we're going to have to split time. But I mean, there's projects all over the city. We have like 10 number one priorities right now in the queue that we're already split on. And so I don't know if that'll be much of an issue. I do think this is close enough to the MRA that there could be a lot of synergy there. And there can be a lot of collaboration that might help. But we wouldn't know that. Like I said, we won't know any of this until we really get down into what their numbers are, what their feasibility. I will also say internally, we want to run our own. So we won't come to the table with just a third party or what they're saying. We want to know internally what this, just our benefit, selfishly with the city, why is this good for us? And then we'll compare. But like I said, I think the real issue comes down to whether or not we think this MOU is something that's binding or something that's important. But like I said, it seems like it's a lot more important to NMSU than it is to us.
So let me do this. We've got maybe 11 minutes left. How many members of the public would like to say any questions? I got you, Senator. Who else? Just one? All right, well, we'll give you 5 minutes, Senator. Just come in here, state your name, please, and I texted you, by the way. I guess you never responded.
Oh, I must have.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah, okay. I just need you to state your name, please.
Steve Fishman. And first of all, just butter you all up, I was really heartened to hear the depth of the conversation and the questions that have been asked. From when I first moved here 18 years ago, the sophistication of the council. You guys just take a lesson about how to butter up a public body here. You've really shown a lot of sophistication and thoughtfulness in the questions that you're asking, and it gives me a lot of faith and confidence going forward. So just a couple of quick comments. One is, personally, the idea of the MOU and discussing things, certainly I have no objection to that. I think that's it's great to have those ongoing discussions. The university is a huge part of this community, a huge part of its who we are and its future development. And in that sense, I totally agree with the mayor and the city manager in their comments in that regard. On the other hand, I have lots of questions, very similar to all the ones that you all raised, about the proposal that's on the table. And is that the one that is the final shape that it should be? I don't want to get into all those details, but I think it takes a lot more study, because there's just a lot of questions there that I have, and I don't need to repeat the ones that you all have raised already. I will raise one point where I think the presentation is probably not accurate, but that it's something for the council to look into. I think the representation that doing this project with the university does not take away any resources elsewhere in the city is not accurate. I think there's lots of research out there, because as a senator in the legislature, we looked at a number of TIDs, and I did a lot of research and a lot of reading. And there are a lot of communities that have run into revenue shortages because they've done too many of these projects. And the new tax revenue that would be coming in has gotten sucked away into these very specific projects, and it creates fiscal stress. The idea that it doesn't take away from anything else going on in the city, well, you might have somebody who's paying 100% of their city taxes, who's running a business in this neighborhood, who decides to relocate to the TID. Or you have a new business coming in that was going to come in regardless, that instead of locating at one area of the city because of the financial incentives, it goes to the TID. And my reaction to the kind of overall big picture to the proposal, it's a little bit of a grab bag. And my first kind of impression in reading the proposal was that essentially it's a grab bag of projects. We got 3, Uptown, South City, and Arrowhead, things that the university wants to do. And essentially the annexation is a way for the university to tap into the city taxing authority in order to fund their preferred project for the campus. There's nothing wrong with that if the city decides it wants to help fund that, but recognize you're making that long-term commitment. And just go into it eyes wide open. My reaction is keep talking. I don't think this is the exact right proposal, but I think if to the extent that we can help with development in Arrowhead, help with the development of, getting the new campuses going, those are certainly worthy goals that, we shouldn't just shut the door on. We should just keep talking until we get to the right proposal. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator. We appreciate that. And those are my sentiments exactly. I mean, I can't tell you how proud I am every time during the, whether it's the NCAA tournament or when the Aggies are playing football on ESPN, there's Las Cruces front and center. And where the staff's work very, very well. In fact, I sometimes I think back on when Chancellor Arvizu would say, "Hey, Ken, we need to work something together." Yeah, sure, okay, I'll call you. Things, and he probably, and staff probably says, "Well, it's a university, yeah, we'll just, get this thing here proposed and run it to the city council." But I think that, again, council's gonna have 5 months, well, probably 4 months, to decide if that's where they want to move forward. Because this is, like I said, it's non-binding. It just allows the university and the city to begin talking and being able to utilize resources, really. Because prior to this, all we can do is, EFO has other things. He has to have it clear. That's why we need a vote, a resolution. That's all is the action on that non-binding MOU on November 6th. To, if we had it here today, well, we don't, but this is just to discuss some of these concerns that everyone's brought up, which I have some too, and I inserted them in here. And, I would like to still have it on November 6th. That gives you time to decide, okay, it's still an up or down vote. You don't have to vote for it. But at least we've given it the best shot we can to the university. So, Counselor, did you have, Flores, would you like to say a few words, closing comments? Or?
The only comment I have is that I agree 100% with Senator Fishman. My concern is the same, that businesses who are starting may prefer the TID area, and businesses that exist may go to the TID area. So, and in terms of there being no impact on what the city has to provide, even though our city manager has said that it wouldn't. I disagree with that. With all due respect, Mr. City Manager, I'm not city manager, but I do know that I'm here and I've been here for 6 years, and I think that sometimes our staff, our departments are overworked, and we know that because. I'm not going to go into the details, but I think that we have to, and then I agree with Councilor Bencomo, who has said that there will be a change the day before. This is supposedly scheduled for City Council to take action on the MOU. So I think we should wait and really think about the implications and the effect it will have on the city and its revenues and its workforce. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. And I think you probably didn't hear, the 6 is just the actual formality of a non-binding MOU. It's not the actual TID application or MOU. It just allows, even right now, just to let the city staff start working with the university. Again, I can't emphasize it enough. We still have 4 more months before the council then decides to move forward. But, okay, I would still like to see it on November 6th, and that way their council, like I said, can decide at that time up or down if they want to go for it or not.
Just to clarify, if we vote no on November 6th, then that means there's no TID and there's no chance of the TID, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty high-risk proposal, Mayor.
Yeah. Oh, I understand, but we gotta, I think from this point forward, when you say, hey, we gotta work with the university, hey, let's use the university to help us with this or help us with that, how can we help bring more economic development into the community? For those who vote no, please don't ever say that again, that we want to do that, because we'll address these concerns. And Councilor Flores, you didn't hear this. Like the city, we hired a company, an organization to help us with our new master plan. I forgot the name of it. What's the name of the one with the former commissioner, Karen Pettis, on that company? I don't see why, if worst case scenario, we couldn't use them for additional staff if needed, because it's reimbursable if we needed to. But I don't think we will, because to do we have a blueprint already. Our previous TID, we know what a TID does. We know what it takes. We know how to do an annexation. Last annexation we did, I was trying to figure out, was 2007, Sierra Norte. And, but I think we owe it to the university to at least bring forward a council action item on November 6th. And if the council says, if the majority says no, okay, well, then that's the majority spoke. But I think between now and then, you'll be able to at least hear some of your concerns by members of the public if they reach out to you.
Just to clarify, again, I'm asking for us to not vote on November 2nd, and I just really would like to voice that, or November 6th. I would like us to delay it, make sure we have all the information we need that was not shared today. And so I would say that I would like to vote yes on this, but if I'm forced to make a decision without information, I will vote no, so.
I get you. Maybe, okay. So, can someone explain, and the reason why I fast-tracked it, a couple reasons. One, because, I'm leaving December 31st, but I thought there was some application that needed to go in, and I think the timeline. Can someone share with me again why we needed to move this quick? Oh, before you get, Scott, Councilor Beta?
Well, thank you. One of the reasons, and I'm probably stealing your thunder there, was the timeline you needed it to move was because of the applications. But I think we heard today that given what we need to do with annexation, that timeline already looks different. And so we can't proceed as according to what you have proposed.
Yes, Mayor, Scott Eschenberger again, Mayor McShima and Councilor Beta, to your point. We're trying to meet a time frame more or less of trying to get before the state legislature in January of 2025. The reality is we knew this was tight, and the reality is it's probably now January of 2026, and that's if we can get it in a 30-day session. So it'll probably delay the final timeline of getting a TID approved by at least a year.
What about November 20th? I mean, would that help? Could you still do it if that?
Yeah,
that's a little bit more time for.
Yeah, I'm going to look at my group, but I think the reality is understanding the annexation requirements and things like that. It was an aggressive timeline. We're not trying to run anything through. We want to make this right? We're working together. And we want to answer all those questions. And if it takes another year, it takes another year. We just have some timelines that we're trying to meet. And in order to do that, get before the State Board of Finance, we have to have this stuff turned in only twice a year. And that's either July 1st or January 1st. And that's the timelines we're working off of.
That gives Councilor Flores time to review the video.
It gives me time to really think about it. And why all of a sudden, as you know, I wasn't here for part of this, but why all of a sudden why is it such a rush? And I don't like to be rushed. I don't know about anybody else. I don't like to be rushed, especially when this decision, and I'm very leery of TIDs. We've been through this before, not with you, but TIDs are a big deal. And if it's a big deal to NMSU, with all due respect, I think we should work together. Why? Why are you pushing it at this time? Why are you pushing it when we will at least have one new person on city council?
Well,
and so, it really, being on council for 6 years now, there's a chemistry. There's something that goes on with how you work with people. And it's going to be hard for someone to catch up right away. And so I think, and I agree with my colleague, Councilor Coran, that if I had to vote on it on November 6th or even November 20, I think I would say no. Definitely November 6th, probably November 7th. I would still say no. But so can you answer the question, why this rush all of a sudden? What happened? Did you give a history as to why we're in this tight spot right now? Or you're in this tight spot, or we are?
Yes, Mayor Megashima and Councilor Flores. I don't want to try and have the impression of this being rushed, and I'm sorry that you feel that way. And I can certainly sit back and see where your concerns are. We originally tried to come before y'all in August 4th, and we we're going to try and move forward with that to the mayor's comments, and rightly so. We needed to do a work session. And so here's where we're at. We're at this work session today, and we're hoping that we can move it forward. If we can't, we can't. I mean, we'll either know where we stand, and the university will. We'll continue to try and do things as we have in the past. We just think we've got an incredible opportunity here, and it's an opportunity that the city has utilized in the past that's been very beneficial. So we're trying to utilize that. But if you feel, we're not here to rush anybody through. We're just showing what the realities are of the timeframes and the approval processes.
So what happened I guess it was, you were trying to get this on a work session calendar here in August. So what happened before that? And you know, it takes several weeks to get things on calendar around here. And I don't know if now you've learned, I mean, now you know. But why? I mean, why would all of a sudden, you know, we want to move? Were you working on something before that was stalled, or?
Well,
and knowing, as you say, you know, you have to go before the legislature, yada, yada, so.
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Flores, the reason, if you look at it, is we had the approval process on July 17th from the Board of Regents. Once we had that approval process, and then we worked with the city and worked on getting that on an approval process, and we did come before in August, early August, to see about getting the non-binding MOU approved. And it became apparent that we needed some more information, so the next step in this process has been the work session. You bet. Thank you.
And Councilor, again, to your comments, and a lot of it was me trying to get it done before, so they could go to the January 25, not this current legislature, but the January 2025. So even another month and a half will push it probably to January 2026. So I think that 2025, I think those are all financial matters that they discuss. I think the legislature every other year, I forget which one that they go. 1 year is 2 months, the other one's 30 days, and the 30 days is the financial one. Yeah, I think that's the financial one. So that's a lot of the fast tracking here, and you know, it just, you would have no idea how many people have come to me on last minute things that's why we've had these special work sessions, and I knew I had this appointment, but you know, I needed at least, I didn't want to do it on a different day. I wanted to be here because I know some of you take certain days off, and you know, it makes it easier, you know, and so to have a meeting on Monday. So, let's see, Councilor Beta still had a question, and then Councilor Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to express support for doing the MOU, but I would rather it be done at a later date. I asked when we had our meeting, I asked for that feasibility study, and I asked for some new information, which I didn't really see here today. And so I would like to see those types of numbers before we really go forward. So I think this could be very successful. I think it could really benefit, of course, my district, and I'm going to be greedy about wanting to, you know, help that. But at the same time, you know, there's a lot of those unanswered questions, and I thought some of those would be answered today, which they haven't been. And so I do want to see this move forward, but I know that it might take just a little bit longer, and I'd rather be thorough about that so it can be successful.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Graham?
Yes, I would also agree with pushing the MOU vote to a later meeting date. And Mayor, I also want to respond to your assertion that to vote no on this would be to close the door on future collaborations with NMSU, because I don't think that's true. Councilor Bencomo gave 2 great examples. We have ongoing collaborations with NMSU. And in case I wasn't clear enough about the philosophical issues I'm having with this, let me be very blunt. I feel like we're being asked to essentially create another pocket of wealth in the city and then rely on trickle-down economics or supply-side economics or whatever you want to call it, which I think has failed spectacularly throughout history to raise up folks who need economic development the most. And at the same time, I'm being asked to grapple with What is the value of open space? We've been talking about a lot of open space and saying, oh, well, we're not getting anything from this. This would be new dollars coming in from open space. There's an inherent value in open space that I am also grappling with. So I don't want it to sound like it's such a simple binary, at least not from the seat where I'm sitting. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just share this with you. So I'm going to put it on the 20th of November. And if you don't have to vote no, you can vote to table it. All right? So you don't have, but I'm telling you, you vote no, that means you are not with the university. That's plain and simple.
That is absolutely
Yeah, well, I'm
inaccurate,
sorry,
Mayor.
no,
You
I'm
really
sorry.
need to
Then
stop
vote to
saying
table,
those
and
kinds
you
of
can vote to
comments.
table. Well,
And to our guest here
excuse
today, I
me,
really
Counselor.
hope that you,
Counselor, I'm sorry, I'm still talking.
no, Mayor, that is
Yeah,
so
yeah,
inappropriate.
I'm sorry. So I'm going to put it on the 20th, and if you want to table it, fine. Table it to another time. But I think that this is just non-binding. This is just to get staff to answer the questions that you want answered. Because if without this, they're not going to be answered. It's not like you're voting for the actual TID. It's just to move forward. You know, to get EFO staff to be able to engage with the university to start spending some money. That's it. It doesn't mean that's why it says non-binding. But if you want to just, at that time, November 20th, that way there, okay, that's fine. At least the table it to next year. But at least it's there so that if in that remote possibility that the questions are answered between then and now. Okay. Yes, Counselor.
Thank you. I really hope to our guests that you don't walk away here today with a completely inaccurate and immature assertion that if I am not in support of this for whatever reason, that I don't want to collaborate with New Mexico State University, the place that ultimately kept me here in this community. And so I really hope that that's not what you're walking away with today, and that my door is absolutely open to collaboration. It's just in the role that I have to make a big decision with very little information. And so I hope that those assertions are not what you walk away with today.
Okay, so as mayor, I get to control the agenda, so I will have it on November 20th. And again, like I said, if it's something there that council wants to table or vote no, that's their choice. All right, so thank you very much for those who came here to provide some input. Appreciate it, Senator and council. Appreciate your comments. I'll give these to, if he hasn't, I'm sure he's already written them down, but if not, we'll make sure that they're addressed. If there's nothing further, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Flores, second by Councilor Bencomo. Christine?
This is on the motion to adjourn the special work session. Councilor Beta?
Yes.
Councilor Graham?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Coran?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondeta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, it's 12:13 p.m. We are adjourned. Thank you.